Hello, and thank you for joining me for this training on feline communication, preventing human-directed aggression in the shelter. My name is Sarah. I'm the enrichment manager at Feline Rescue. I've been here about 4 years now. I've previously been a caregiver and an intake caregiver on Tuesday nights. I also have a cat behavior consulting business here locally in the Twin Cities. So what is the purpose of this training? It's going to be to keep visitors and volunteers safe, to meet the mental health needs of our cats, to reduce the length of stay for our cats, and to promote positive relationships between shelter cats and humans. The things we will cover in this presentation include the shelter as an unnatural environment, reasons why cats bite, communication through body language, including eyes, ears, whiskers, mouth, tail, and overall body postures, and distance reducing versus distance increasing behaviors, how we can use our own bodies to communicate, how to approach a cat for interaction, how to pick up a cat, communication with visitors, and what to do when a cat is showing signs of distress. So interacting with cats in the shelter environment is different than interacting with them in our homes. The shelter is stressful and quite unnatural for them. They are probably not used to being confined in a cage, seeing other cats, or they may be distrustful of people because of previous experiences. We've also removed their ability to retreat and placed them in a space with many unfamiliar cats, people, lots of unpleasant sounds and smells, and to them the environment is very unpredictable. All of this makes them more likely to become frustrated, shut down, and act aggressively. This makes sense that in this scenario, cats are prone to feelings of fear, anxiety, and stress. Understanding the shelter environment and feline-specific needs is a crucial component to preventing human-directed aggression. So now we're going to go over some reasons why cats bite. The most common reasons include play, predatory aggression, petting-induced, which is also referred to as overstimulation or impulse control aggression, fear, redirected aggression, and pain or discomfort. So first we'll go over a little bit about play aggression. This is really common for young cats because this is a natural part of their young life stage where they're learning hunting skills. Sometimes it can be a result of a lack of stimulation because the cat just doesn't have enough to do and suddenly anything that moves becomes a toy. It can also be because of poorly taught play behaviors, which is unfortunately quite common when people use hands, fingers, and feet for toys. Sometimes it can also be an attention-seeking behavior because cats just enjoy playing with us. So what are some of the signals to look out for? Things like a low body posture, if they're hunched low to the ground, stalking, chasing, and pouncing are all signals. I've also noticed that if a cat, if you're playing with a cat and you tend to notice that they redirect their own play behavior from a toy to your hands, I found that this is a higher risk scenario for a cat to possibly engage in play aggression. So how do we prevent it? Of course, we always use toys for play, never fingers or hands. Not only does this teach appropriate play behavior, but it also helps set the cat and their potential adopters up for success after they leave the shelter. And we should avoid putting hands and fingers through the kennel doors and redirect the cat to a toy if they go after hands or fingers. Next up is predatory aggression. This is similar to play aggression and has some crossover, especially in the behaviors that lead up to it. But the difference is that predatory aggression is directly related to predation. It's generally quieter, stealthier, and much more sudden than play aggression, which is often happening when you're already in the act of playing with the cat. So why is it common? Well, because cats are natural hunters. Sometimes it's because of a lack of stimulation as well. The signals for predatory aggression are, like I mentioned, tend to be really subtle. They're not always obvious to the casual observer. Cats are sit and wait predators, meaning they spend a lot of their time quietly watching and waiting for the prey to come to them and for their opportunity to attack. This also means that they have a unique ability to go from calm and quiet to a highly aroused state. Body language indicators can include a low body posture, like the photo you see here, Stalking, wide eyes, dilated pupils, chasing, and pouncing. So how do we prevent it? Again, we're going to avoid putting hands and fingers through the kennel doors because to the cat this might seem like prey. We want to avoid sudden and fast movements when cleaning and working in the kennel. And we want to be alert for predatory body language. Next up is petting induced, also, like I said, also called overstimulation or impulse control aggression. Why is it common? Many cats are sensitive to the way they are touched and pet, especially by unfamiliar people. Cats typically prefer petting on the head and cheeks, and if you watch cats grooming each other, you'll notice that it's almost always focused on the head and cheeks. The pheromones released in this part of the body are friendlier pheromones, and they signal comfort and security. Cats can also use this type of aggression in this sense as a way to control. Cats also use aggression in this sense as a way to control when petting starts and stops. And you'll see that a key theme throughout this whole presentation is that cats need to have a sense of control over their environment. So what are some of the signals that would lead up to this? A change in ear position can indicate a change in arousal level. Same with dilated pupils, tail movement that starts or increases in speed, a sudden turn of their head, especially in the direction of your hand, a warning bite or a warning chomp that doesn't necessarily make contact with your hand, growling or other vocalizations, body stiffening or if their body suddenly becomes tense, and skin twitching or rippling as well. Often this happens along the back. Any of these can be sudden changes with brief warning signals. So how do we prevent it? Well, we let them solicit affection from us. Don't assume that they want to be pet. Always present your hand for sniffing first to see how they respond. Focus petting on the head and cheeks. And again, watch for body language changes. So next up is fear. Cats in the shelter might be unfamiliar or distrustful of humans and view you as a threat, especially when they're new to the shelter. If you think about what their journey may have looked like prior to arriving in our care, it was probably filled with scary things like getting shoved in a kennel or trapped or examined, maybe poked with vaccinations, and all of these would have an association with humans. A cat's instinct is to survive, and depending on the situation, they will either fight or flee to do so. The fight or flight nervous system response is not under voluntary control for them. So this fear can be triggered by tactile, visual, auditory, or olfactory stimuli from humans or other aspects of the environment. Most feline aggression is defensive rather than offensive, and typically a fearfully aggressive cat will choose avoidance first because this is far less risky than engaging in a fight. But because we have confined them in a kennel, they are unable to retreat and may either freeze or fight instead. So what are some of the signals leading up to fear aggression? Hissing, growling, an arched back, piloerect furs, which is when their furs kind of stand on end. Ears down and back are attempts to make themselves small. Crouching, drawing the head in, rolling onto their side and back with the paws out and ready to defend. Many people think that when cats expose their belly by laying on the side, that they are in a submissive position, but that is not the case. This is actually when they are most ready to defend themselves. A fearful cat that is ready to defend themselves is hard to miss. It's a pretty classic scared cat body posture, much like this picture here. So how do we prevent it? Working calmly and quietly. Do your best to provide a peaceful environment for the cats. Avoid direct eye contact, which can appear threatening to them. And give them space. If you notice any of the signals mentioned above, then just let the cat be and let them relax. Next up is redirected aggression. This type of aggression happens when the cat can't get to their intended target, whether it be another cat, person, toy, or whatever else. The attack is secondary to what the primary aggressive cause is. Could be fear, predatory, or territorial. Sometimes it happens at home when your cat sees another cat outside the window, but they can't get to them. So they attack the cat that's next to them or another pet or person nearby. Or it can happen if you're breaking up a cat fight and you get in the middle. One of the cats may attack you instead of their intended target. This is somewhat common in a shelter because of having many cats in kennels. Cats are highly territorial and may see the other cats as a threat. So when we put many of them together, it increases the likelihood that they will lash out. If you're working in a cat's kennel, either cleaning or interacting with them, they may suddenly see another cat nearby and react aggressively. I've seen this happen many times when a cat has the ability to peek outside of their kennel around the corner and see the cat next to them. Some of the signals would include staring at another cat, peering their head around the corner of their kennel, like I mentioned, hissing or growling, approaching another kennel. This doesn't necessarily mean they will react aggressively, but it's important to notice when this is happening so that we can monitor the situation effectively. And how do we prevent it? Be aware of the locations of other cats. Direct a cat away from the other kennels. Use toys or treats or whatever means you have available to you. And of course, don't put yourself between two cats fighting. Next up is pain. And ideally, all of our cats are having their pain managed well. But of course, because of the nature of what we do at the shelter, by taking in cats in need, they are more likely to be healing from an illness, injury, or surgery. Cats in pain from an injury or illness might feel vulnerable and may feel a heightened need to protect themselves. As discussed before, cats are already sensitive to touch, and being in pain or discomfort is only going to heighten that sensitivity. Signs of discomfort can include decreased activity and decreased grooming, and also a negative or aggressive response to just a slight touch. How do we prevent it? Handle cats only when necessary. If you notice that a cat doesn't like to be touched in a certain spot, or that is showing other signs of pain or discomfort, alert vet services or your shift lead. Okay, next up we're going to talk a little bit about how cats communicate. Cats communicate with us primarily through body language, including eyes, ears, whiskers, mouth, head, and whole body postures. Along with those, we would include vocalizations and environment when we're assessing a cat. It's important to look at this holistically with all indicators taken into account. A change in any one of these can indicate a change in the cat's arousal level. For example, if you are petting a cat and their eyes suddenly become round, you'll want to evaluate the rest of the cat's body and environment and determine whether it's safe to keep interacting with them. Keep in mind that just because when you start petting a cat, they were showing comfortable body language signals, doesn't mean that they will remain comfortable for the whole interaction. You should frequently pause and assess the situation. Another thing that's important to keep in mind is that cat communication is subtle but constant. Changes can be minuscule and not always easy to pick up on, so we must be vigilant. Another way to think about how cats communicate with us is distance increasing versus distance reducing behaviors. These can be whole body actions or just a single body part such as the head or ears. The goal of a distance increasing behavior is to keep others from getting closer to them. Like I mentioned earlier, cats will choose to retreat before engaging in conflict. They only attack when their warnings aren't heeded and they feel like they don't have any other available options to them. So things like retreating to the back of the kennel, avoiding eye contact, or moving their head back when your hand is presented for sniffing are all distance increasing attempts. Distance reducing behaviors encourage social interaction and signals that they mean no harm. Approaching the front of the kennel, body rubbing your legs or the kennel bars, head bunting are all included in this. Okay, so I really like this graphic because it conveys a lot of information. As you move from the left to the right, the cat is becoming more confident and reactive. As you move from the top to the bottom, the cat is showing increased fear and attempts to withdraw. You can see the ears are getting lower, the pupils are getting bigger, all signs of fear. You might think that the cat in the bottom left is the one who is most likely to lash out with aggression. However, this cat is showing clear signs and distance increasing behaviors and will only use aggression as a last resort. Hopefully your interaction with this cat would stop well before they reach the point of aggression. The cats in the right column here are more likely to act aggressively with fewer warning signals. You can see the eyes have changed shape a little bit and the ears turned back. These cats are more assertive and more likely to act offensively. Throughout the next slides, we're going to go through some examples of body language, and I encourage you to think about how you would interpret each of these individual cats. Oops. So first up, we have the ears. In this top graphic here, if we are just looking at the ears, I would say cats 1, 4, and 5 are all comfortable enough to interact with. Cats 2 and 3 are clearly showing some agitation with the ears turned back and down. 3 is very fearful. 2 is agitated but more confident and assertive. On the bottom here, the cat on the left is very calm, not showing any signs of distress. The cat in the middle has something that has piqued its attention, and it's likely taking in more information to determine how it should respond. The cat on the right is again in that stage of confident and assertive. This cat is in an aroused state, and I wouldn't attempt any physical interaction with them until they have calmed down. All of the cats here on this slide are showing some level of arousal or tension. Ears are either turned out and back or are very low in attempts to withdraw. Next up, we're going to talk about the eyes, and first off, just the overall shape of the eyes. We'll talk about pupils in a moment. So a cat that is relaxed will typically have more almond-shaped eyes, like the picture on the left here. The more open and round they become, the more the cat is experiencing a heightened emotion. Generally speaking, from left to right here, the cats are getting more aroused. You might be familiar with this black cat here at the top. This is Ichabod Crane from the shelter, and he's often seen with very open, wide eyes, and he does have a history of biting. You might also be familiar with the idea of a slow blink from cats. A slow blink is a good indicator that a cat is feeling calm and comfortable. Next up, we'll talk about pupils. Pupil size will obviously change depending on the level of light that the cat is in, but in our case in the shelter, it's mostly well lit, and this would be a good indicator to look out for. The wider the pupils get, the more fear the cat is likely experiencing. Pupils will get very wide before a cat attacks, either defensively or before pouncing on a toy. A change in pupil size is a really good indicator that something about the cat's comfort level has changed, or something about their behavior is about to change. If you are petting a cat and their pupils get wide, you should stop right away and assess what else is going on with the cat. Again, looking at the eyes, we should pay attention to the direction of their gaze. If the cat is staring at your hand, they may be getting ready to swat or nip at it. If they are highly focused on another cat in their kennel, and maybe because they are feeling threatened or uneasy, this would be a scenario where redirected aggression could come into play. Next up, talking about the whiskers. So for me, whiskers tend to be harder to assess because their movement is pretty subtle. A cat that is feeling fearful will have their whiskers pulled in closer to the face, which would be a distance increasing behavior. A neutral whisker is held kind of in the middle, and a cat that has their whiskers pushed forward slightly is using them to gain more information, perhaps preparing to attack prey. The mouth obviously has a lot of different movements, and not all of them are indicative of a cat that is in an aggressive state. Looking at the mouth is definitely something where you should be taking multiple indicators into account. A meowing cat might be seeking attention or signaling they are unhappy or just generally being chatty. Obviously, hissing, growling, or yowling are all indicators you shouldn't interact with a cat. The phlegm response is when the cat has their mouth held open agape. This is done when they are analyzing a scent that they have picked up on, generally pheromones. And they use a special organ in the back of their mouth called the vomeronasal to investigate it. While this is not an immediate indicator of aggression, it does mean that they are picking up on something that has piqued their interest, likely the smells of another cat, and it's a good idea to watch how they react afterwards. Panting is not often something that we'll see in cats and can be an indicator of a health issue. So if you see a cat panting, you should notify vet services. The tail is a great signaler of how a cat's feeling. A happy cat often greets you with their tail held high, maybe with a hook at the end. A scared or less confident cat will hold it lower between their legs if they're feeling really particularly fearful. Tail movement can indicate that they are unhappy or agitated with what's going on, whether that's being pet or being too close to someone or something they're uncomfortable with. I use tail movement as an indicator every day with my cats in my home. I know that when I'm petting them, if the tail starts to flick, they don't like what I'm doing and I should stop. Here we have some examples on the left of a couple happy, confident cats. The tabby cat on the top is feeling less confident, and the two on the bottom as well. These two are both holding their tails closer to the body. Here's a video I took of a cat that I was assessing to see how he tolerated being outside of his kennel for activity. You can see he was quite agitated and focused on someone outside of the room. I ended up not upgrading him to outside kennel activity because he needed more time to adjust to being in the shelter. But this is a cat that it's pretty easy to pick up on that he's a little bit agitated and unhappy, and I actually returned him to his kennel shortly after this, so he had time to relax. So next up, we're going to look at whole body postures. And this is another graphic similar in structure to the one we looked at before, but this time it shows whole body postures. From left to right, the cat is getting more offensively aggressive. From the top to the bottom, the cat is getting more fearful. The cats in the purple triangle are trying to retreat or use distance-increasing behaviors. Again, these cats will use aggression as a last resort. The teal triangle shows cats that are more likely to lash out with fewer or more subtle warning signals. On the top left here, we have a very comfortable tabby cat that is laying on their side. The tail is laying to the back in a relaxed manner. Looks like he might be grooming himself. This cat is not a threat in his current state. In the top middle, we have a cat that is being a bit assertive and offensive. His fur is piloerect, and he has a slight arch to his back. This cat needs space and time to lower his arousal levels. The cat in the top right here is very much in the lower portion of that purple triangle from the previous slide. The cat is fearful. He's attempting to withdraw. You can see the weight is back away from whatever the threat is. This cat will use aggression as a last resort. The two photos here in the bottom left are a good comparison. The gray cat is relaxed in a classic cat loaf with his paws tucked under. The black cat is in a very similar position, but the key difference is that he's perched up on his paws rather than having them tucked under. He's not quite as comfortable as the gray cat is, and he's ready to move quickly if he needs to. The cat in the bottom right is also a bit fearful. He's hunched low to the ground, his tail is held relatively low, and the fur is piloerect, and even his ears are a little bit turned out, especially the one on his right. Okay, so some last final examples where we can put multiple aspects of the body language together. Starting in the top left, we have two cats that are assessing one another. Sniffing noses is a pretty common cat-to-cat greeting. Both have their ears back. My assessment is that the one on the right is slightly more comfortable with what's going on. His weight is a little bit more forward. He's sitting and his fur seems relatively flat. The cat on the left's weight is a little bit towards the back. Its tail is between its legs and the fur is piloerect. Neither of these cats want to fight one another, but certainly the one on the left would use aggression as a last resort if needed. In the bottom left, we have a cat that is definitely showing some anxiety, with the ears turned out and back, eyes wide, and pupils pretty large. Whiskers are mostly neutral, maybe a little bit pushed forward. This cat should be left alone, and whatever is agitating them removed if possible. The cat in the middle is Ichabod again. He does appear mostly relaxed, however his ears are upright and forward, and his eyes are wide. He's not outwardly aggressive, but he's very much aroused. This is a cat that I would only pet if I presented my hand to him and he responded with head bunting. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave him alone or maybe play with him from a distance. The cat in the top right is sitting alert with wide eyes and big pupils. They are not entirely comfortable, and he may or may not accept interaction from somebody. The cat in the bottom right is attempting to withdraw. The weight is towards the back, the tail held low, ears slightly turned out, eyes wide, and large pupils. This cat needs a space. Okay, so what can we do to signal to cats that we mean no harm? Using our bodies, we can avoid direct eye contact, which appears threatening to a cat. We can orient ourselves sideways so that we appear smaller and so the cat feels less trapped. We move slowly and thoughtfully. If you attempt to pet them, you bring your hand in from underneath and in the front. The cat should be able to see your hand approaching for petting so they aren't startled. Use that slow blink we talked about. Blinking and then looking away is a very good way to show the cat that you mean no harm. So we also need to gain trust and get consent from the cats that we interact with. They aren't familiar with us and don't know what to expect from us in the shelter environment. These cat guidelines were written by Dr. Lauren Finca from Nottingham Trent University. She does research on assessing cats' sociability in the shelter environment and how to best manage their welfare. It's a simple, easy to understand and remember method to give cats choice-based interaction with humans. The C stands for choice and control. We have to let the cat dictate physical interaction with us. A is for paying attention. You should be observing and assessing the cat during your interaction with them. T is for limiting touch. We want to focus on the head and the cheeks where cats prefer to be pet, and also limit it to just a little bit at a time. So if we want to pet a cat, how do we do this in the least stressful manner? So if we want to pet a cat, how do we do this in a low stress manner? All cats are going to vary in their tolerance. There's no one and done method. You need to be aware of each individual cat's comfort levels and assess them frequently. Use your voice first. Speak calmly and quietly so they know you're nearby. Let the cat approach you so that they are making the choice to be pet, not the human. Extend your hand for sniffing first. If the cat shrinks back, ears turn out or down, eyes get wide, they are not interested in being touched. If they are interested, they generally respond with a head butt to your hand. Pet them slowly and gently on the head and cheeks. Stop after a few seconds to let them smell your hand again. Assess them for any other body language changes and either resume or let them be. Continue to monitor the cat for changes in their arousal level. This should be a constant activity when you're interacting with the cat. If at any point the cat shows signs of distress, stop immediately and let them relax. So how do we pick up a cat? Starting off, it's very similar as the previous slide. Use your voice first and approach slowly. Extend your hand for sniffing. If consent is given, softly place your hands around their body as if you were going to pick them up, but do not lift them up at first. Once again, assess their comfort level before proceeding. Again, place your hands gently around their body and pick them up. Hold them securely next to your body. If they push away or have any other signs of distress, place them down right away again and give them time to relax. Looking at these two photos here, neither of them are great examples of touching and picking up a cat. You generally want to have one hand or arm under the midsection behind their front arms and another underneath their bottom or back legs for support. To me, this white cat looks like they're pushing away, and they also aren't able to move their front arm because the person is holding it. The orange cat clearly looks like he's trying to move away from the touch of the person, and his weight is towards the back. So as volunteers, we interact with cats a lot. We probably have a strong interest in them, and we're able to learn about cats from others around us in the shelter. With visitors, we don't always know what their background is and how familiar they are with cats. So it's very, very important to make sure that we communicate with them how to interact with the cats in the shelter. So how do we do this? We're going to demonstrate how the cats like to be interacted with and follow the cat guidelines. Be a model of good interaction for the visitors in our shelter. Help the visitors correctly interpret the cat's behavior. You can tell them about the cat's body language and what it means in terms of their comfort level. Provide realistic expectations about the individual cats and how they have acted in the shelter. If you know a cat has a history of being fearful, be open with the visitor about what that means. And make sure to use objective language as you're describing this. So what should we do when a cat is showing clear signs of distress? You should calmly return them to their kennel. You can use toys or treats to lure them in. You can gently use a towel or blanket to guide them in. And use heavy gloves if the cat is being highly reactive. You're going to give them time to relax on their own in their kennel. At this time, you're going to limit interaction with them. This is most likely going to be for the rest of your shift because cats that are in a highly aroused state can take hours or days to fully calm down. If the cat is having a hard time staying calm because of the activity outside of their kennel, attach a towel or blanket to the front to prevent the line of sight for them. Note what happened in the cat's log. This is a really important step so that we can prevent distress for the cat again in the future because other volunteers will be able to read all of the log entries. Include what triggered the situation, how the cat reacted, and how it was resolved. In summary, here are our bite prevention do's and don'ts. Do give the cat a choice in interaction with you. Keep your full attention on the cat. Only use toys for play, never hands or fingers. Redirect the cat to an appropriate toy when needed. Be very clear and direct to visitors about how to interact with a cat, especially if the cat has a history of fear, stress, anxiety, or aggression. Be familiar with cat body language. Wash your hands between cats so they don't have to smell the other cats on your hands. Don't force interaction on a cat. Don't pick up a cat unless you know they tolerate being held and you have given them a choice. Don't interact with a cat that is showing signs of distress. And don't attempt to touch, reassure, or punish a cat that is in a highly aroused state. And finally, for those of you who would like to learn a little bit more about cats and how to interact with them, here are some great resources. ASPCA Pro has some great webinars on the topic, including this one here on humane feline handling. Fear Free Shelters is a free program for those who work or volunteer in a shelter. You just need to submit proof of your employment or volunteer status. For those of you who might be more science-minded and have an interest in research, here's a link to Dr. Lauren Finke's publications. And I also particularly like iCat Care. It's a wonderful resource for anyone who interacts with cats. Thank you all for participating in this. If you have any questions about this presentation or about cats in the shelter, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to help.